So my full name is Dan Noakes. I live in Idaho, and I am, I guess you would call me an animator. That's how I make money, is I do animation work. And then also I've been a skier for almost my whole life. And then when I got introduced into backcountry skiing, uh, that's like hiking up the mountain and then skiing down. So I guess like my background, I'll just explain like how I got into animation and why I got into animation. So I originally studied accounting because I thought all the rich people in my neighborhood were accountants and they work in finance. And so I just thought that's what you do and that's how you make a living. But as I was studying it, one, I was terrible at it, and then two, I was kind of depressed because I thought, because I worked at the ski resort at the time in college, and I thought, once I graduate college, I'm gonna be stuck in an office somewhere that's not gonna be near snow, and my schedule for work is not gonna permit me to go skiing as much as I like to.
Mhm.
And so that's when I got introduced to backcountry skiing. And in Utah, it's a place where you can wake up super early in the morning and you can go skiing actually before work, and it's called a dawn patrol.
Mhm.
And so that totally like changed my vision of the future. I thought, wow, my life is not doomed. I can actually ski. I can ski forever, and I can work and I can make money. Um, so so I started backcountry skiing in 2011. I met some of like the best mentors ever. They were all older than me, and we would wake up before the sun rises and we would go skiing. And they were working people, and I was like just starting my career. And then anyway, like my career with accounting, it moved me into San Francisco, and I was in San Francisco, and I wasn't able to ski. Was not able to do dawn patrols like I was in Utah. And so I just thought like, this is stupid. Why am I living my life like this? I want to go skiing a lot more. And so I quit my job, and my interests, I had like an artistic interest. And so I just spent a ton of time on online tutorials. I spent a lot of time just doing animation, trying to build up my skill set. So I basically like built up this skill set, and then I quit my job, and then I started doing animation on my own, moved back to Salt Lake City where rent was a lot cheaper than in San Francisco. And then I was able to run my business and then have the opportunity to go skiing every day. That's like a long-winded question of what happened, or long-winded answer of what happened. So one thing, I think, if you want to make snowboarding or skiing, or let's say surfing, or something recreational a priority, you have to make it a priority in your life. Like, you have to intentionally do that. And I was saying that society doesn't really value that. So they just value, money or a paycheck or stability or a big house or a fancy car or something like that. This is something totally different that sometimes it's hard to put a dollar figure to, but it's one of the most enriching experiences that I think we can experience. As you stated, snowboarding has brought you tremendous amount of joy. And so first you have to prioritize it, and you have to recognize, okay, this is something I'm going to prioritize, and I could care less about what society says. And so for me, but then there's this equation of I have to get money. And so for me, yes, when I started animation, I was terrible at animation. I wasn't good at all, but I was skiing during the day and I was animating. I was single at the time. I didn't have any kids or wife or anything like that. So I was skiing during the day or in the mornings. And then I'd spend probably the afternoon all the way to midnight or beyond just trying to do animation. So working on videos, um, contacting people. And I was lucky enough to have friends. I had probably two or three friends that really helped me in the beginning. I had one friend in particular. His name is Peter Bookman, and he handed me jobs, basically saying like he was almost giving me a chance. I had a friend named Kurt Daniels. He also hooked me up with jobs, and then my friend Seth Quayle, he hooked me up with jobs. So when I started out, I got extremely lucky to have friends that were willing to to give me jobs. And they were able to give me jobs because they were either working for a company that needed work or they knew people that needed work. And then the other way I was able to get jobs in those early days was my prices were super low because my skill set wasn't there. So there were companies that relied on animators like me with low skill sets and low prices to deliver a cheap video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's how it all started. And then it's my getting clientele I can explain to you further because it's no secret for like a freelance animator. I can just tell you how to get it. But as your skill sets improve, your clients are different, the demands are different, and like the way you get clients can be different as well. But going back to it, the motivation to start my own business was definitely skiing. Yeah, 100%. It was, I wanted to be able to be free enough to go skiing how I wanted and when I wanted. Absolutely.
Totally.
It's an obsession. Like people don't recognize this. Like if you want to get good at something, you got to be obsessed with it. And
Yeah.
so skiing, I was obsessed with it, and I loved being obsessed with it. And like as living in Utah, man, that place is so awesome because you have the you have the opportunities right there in the city to make money, and then you have the mountains right there to recreate as well. I think when you're single, you don't have any kids and you don't have a wife and you're not in charge of feeding all those people and taking care of all those people, the risk is much lower. And I recognize that, like my thinking was that if I don't start this soon, then the risk and the difficulty of starting it later is going to increase as I get married and as I have kids.
Mm-hmm.
But the advice that I would tell people that are married and that have kids, but they do want to start their own business, is the way to minimize that risk is save up an emergency fund that is, I would say, 6 months to a year to maybe even 2 years of living expenses, and then try something on your own. And if it doesn't work out in those 2 years, then you can always go back to that stable job because you probably have the skills.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, you just spent, time exploring, trying to start your own business and snowboarding or skiing a ton, and you're super happy with that.
Yeah.
So I would say you can minimize that risk by having that emergency fund. The problem is a lot of people don't have that emergency fund. They just keep on buying stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so how you accumulate that emergency fund is you really have to live very poorly for a while, accumulate a mass of money that will sustain you for 2 years, and then try it. And then during those 2 years, when you're starting something, it depends what type of business you're starting. What I call my business, people call it like freelancing. I basically just call it like a minimal startup. It's just like a minimal business. So I don't have much overhead. I'm like the skill of it. It's just like a minimal kind of solo entrepreneur startup. That's what I started. But I did that because it was conducive to my lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
What gets a lot of praise in our society, I feel like, and a lot of attention is these startups that are venture backed.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem I saw with that is that it'd be like going from one job to the next. Instead of being a slave to your boss, you'd be a slave to the investors. And then they could demand a schedule on you. But if I was a solo entrepreneur just on my own, I could create the schedule. And I could dictate how much money I wanted to. So if I wanted more money, I would work harder.
Mm-hmm.
But with that said, Sarah, with my business, there's a cap to how much you earn. So I'm doing all of the labor, I'm getting all of the clients. And if I do contract labor out to other people, it's because I found the right client that's willing to pay the right price. And that's hard to do a lot of times. And so, because people say to me like, oh, why don't you just hire people? It's like, well, that's, more complicated than it seems. You have to get the right client with the right price. And then you eat up a ton of your margins trying to to employ these contractors because they're very expensive. So I found it was the best fit for me just to do it all on my own. And that's why I stuck with the 2D style that I stuck with, because that's something I could just manage on my own. And then with each client that I got managing it on my own, I could set the schedule and the pace of the project. And I always left the mornings open so that I could ski every day and I would not miss a powder day. In my area where it's extremely visual, it's basically you send them a portfolio. And so I would cold email potential clients. So and it depends. So if I did not have work, usually, so there's like two main ways that I got work. One is by a referral basis, but then you ask, how do you get a referral if you're just starting? It's like, well, I guess I got my referral from an old coworker. How did you get that old coworker if you didn't have a job? Well, it's like, well, I guess I had to start working somewhere. Then I got the coworker, then I quit, then he gave me a referral. So there's like a long process to get that referral. It's not just like get referrals. So there's two things. So get referrals from people that you know, and that takes a lot of time to do and effort. Or you cold contact somebody and you ask them for work. And this actually proved pretty valuable for me. So you search out different agencies that were always looking for freelancers. And then I sent them my portfolio and said, hey, check out my portfolio. I think I'm a good fit for your company. If you need work, you can always call me. And these agencies were always searching for work. And so they would call me and, if I'm a good fit, they would hire me.
Mm-hmm.
And then occasionally I'd get a referral from somebody that had a contact in a company. So I'd go directly to the company and then they'd want to work with me. So there's the agency and there was the direct to client work. And potentially you should get more money if you're working directly with the client instead of with the middleman, the agent. But a lot of times the companies that would hire me were smaller, or they have been working with a ton of freelancers in the past that would charge low rates. And so like to compete, if I charged a higher rate, they would just try to find some other freelancer.
Yeah.
So they were used to that freelancer model, but there was occasionally a company that was big enough that it was a matter of them asking for budget. Those companies you could charge the higher price.
Mm-hmm.
But the companies that knew kind of like, oh, we're hiring a freelancer, we're going to get this rate, they would just look for another freelancer.
Right.
Right. There was another source of how I got clients too, and this was back before the pandemic. Meetup.com was kind of like in its heyday where people were meeting up and setting up their own meetups and stuff like that. So in Salt Lake City, when I moved there, there was no motion graphic meetup. And so my idea was I was sick of going to meetups, and the only opportunity I had to introduce myself was, what they gave me. And they raised my hand saying, I'm Dan, I do motion graphics, but that was it. All the attention went on the presenter or the organizer of the event.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, if I want to be the center of attention, I need to organize my own meetup and I need to be in charge of it. So I organized the Salt Lake City motion graphic meetup, and yeah, I teamed up with some great friends and we made that meetup into something special. And so we met up every single month. People knew who I was, and we started an online community on Facebook. And so that was an opportunity for all of us to pick up work, because then people were posting on the meetup saying, hey, I need an animator, or they would come just directly to me and say, hey, I found you through the meetup and I need this job. So sometimes it's just like whoever's getting attention the loudest, people will just say like, oh, he's an animator, like he's been loud on Facebook or loud on meetup.com, or like, so I'm just gonna reach out to him.
Do you use like social media as a way to market yourself at all?
Not so much. Like I would say email is more of the marketing tool that I use to connect. And then email for just, I try to personalize my communication. And I find with social media, I cannot compete with how talented people are on social media. Like they are posting the best work. So the best way I can compete is just a one-on-one introduction or a phone conversation or a video chat, just to make that connection, try to get the confidence, built to say like, I can do great work for you.
Mm-hmm. When you say email, are you talking about like weekly newsletter, that kind of email, or just more like personal email?
No, it was just the personal emails. And so for my so for animation,
Mm-hmm.
as a freelancer, basically, I was working with project managers, or yeah, mainly project managers. And so it was reaching out to them personally, showing them my work, and not being so pushy, saying like, when's, because people have done that to me and they're always emailing me constantly, like every month. I'm like, I just don't have work for you. I'm sorry. Um, but I just kind of like, hey, this is, if I updated a reel, saying like, hey, I updated a reel, or reaching out saying, hey, I'm available for work if you have anything. If not, no worries. Like I tried to make as best of a human connection as possible, and that
Mm-hmm.
usually happened through emails. Yeah.
So when did you start your like animation business or like start freelancing?
I started full time in 2014.
Okay.
Hmm. Yeah. And but to caveat, so like, here's the thing, Sarah. I believe I can go off forever, like, of how important recreation is, and how important skiing is, and powder skiing and all that stuff. Like, it truly does something to our souls that no other activity can provide for us. And it's a shame that it's not as valued as it should be, because it gives us tremendous amount of joy. With that said, I think sometimes there's an awakening within one to recreate more or to work more.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, I felt like with my family and with the situation we're in, we're okay money wise, but I felt like I was running into a roadblock of motivation. So I actually picked up a full-time job. So right now, I
Mm-hmm.
am a full-time employee for the first time in 8 years with a company called Salad.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's perfect timing because the snow is melting, and so now is the time that I'm going to dedicate myself to work.
Mm-hmm.
Once the snow starts falling again, it's going to be a priority of powder skiing for sure. I mean, that's how I've lived my life for a long time. So there was a wise because I remember this is more than 8 years ago. No, it was, I was living in Seattle at the time, and I was employed by a company, and I did not enjoy it. And I went to an avalanche, like, it was a fundraising event or something like that. But I sat next to a photographer, and he was well known at the event. People like always went up to him like, great work, all this stuff like that. And I asked him like, I don't like my job, like, what do I do? And he just said, I think there's a time. He's like, there's a time and season for everything. There's a time when things will go well, and then there's a time that things won't go well. And I've had to learn that in my life as well, where in Seattle, that was a time when things just weren't going well. And then I made the changes to say, I don't want this. I want something different. I want to be able to go skiing every single day. And then I made that change. So I think people have to realize there will be times when you don't enjoy your life and the situation you're in, and you have the power to make a change. Hopefully you have the power. Hopefully you're not like captive and in handcuffs or something like that. Hopefully you do have the power to make the change. And then when you make that change and you're able to ski every day, just be grateful when it's a powder day. Be grateful for every day of life. But yeah, I would say now, right now is like a season for work for me. But once the snow starts falling again, there's powder. It will be a time for skiing. I think the most challenging was comparing myself to my other friends. So besides like the challenge of work of trying to be a good designer and compete, that's pretty challenging, I think. And it requires a lot of effort.
Mm-hmm.
But also too, just nobody understands like how much work you actually do when you're a freelancer on your own, because yes, I went skiing a lot, but I also worked a lot as well.
Right.
And sometimes that work was just me thinking about it constantly, or taking time to budget, taking hours of my day budgeting my money so that it could work. And I think just feeling like you you didn't feel the approval from people because maybe your salary or like your take home pay was a little bit less than them, or people just thought people thought I was a vagabond. I would just like ski and I wasn't responsible or anything. I think that shame, it was satisfying a little bit because I could go skiing, but also too it was challenging and it hurt because it's my perception to my friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
So very few people understood the value of what I was doing. That was the hardest. That's the hardest part. And so that's when when you reached out to me and you're like, I'd like to interview for this. I'm like, whoa, that maybe is the first time that somebody like, not directly that I know has come to me and said like, this is valuable. I've
And
seen
then,
the value of it. Every time I go powder skiing and like the lifestyle of being free to wake up in the morning and ski and still make a living, still, be able to have a family. Like, whoa, this is worth millions of dollars. Like,
yeah.
how is this not a business in and of itself to teach people how to do this? But like, what I haven't found a way to to get people on board. It just seems like people are just stuck in their 9 to 5 job, buying Teslas and their big houses, and that's what they like to do. I started my animation business because of skiing. 100%. 100%. I wanted to be able to have a job and ski whenever I wanted. That was the main motivation. I wish more people valued it because it's like, it's amazing. And I see some people value it, but it's very few. Like honest, I can't, I don't know. There's so many places I go to and just feel like nobody understands what I'm doing. They just kind of say, oh, cool, you ski. That's fun. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into creating a lifestyle that I can ski as much as I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.